Hello and welcome to Two Words Wolves Pod. I'm Ryan Eichten, and with me as always is Leo Sun. Leo, how you doing?
Darkness surrounds me, Ryan. It's a 2-game losing streak, and these losses are tough, but at the same time, they are reminders that there's other things in life that we could do and go enjoy outside of sports, especially the Timberwolves. So not great, but we'll survive. We got each other, right?
Exactly. Unfortunately, if the other things are more important than life of basketball, so if that's the first analysis, things probably aren't going great. But it is certainly true that try not to put too much emotional baggage into any sporting event, but especially Minnesota Timberwolves basketball. But yeah, we can head into our first topic. 2 games have happened since the last time we posted a pod. We had a big long break. We put out 2 pods in the span between the Phoenix and Toronto games. And I think we are especially looking at that Toronto game as a point of whether they could kind of bounce back, have the increased effort or whatever you want to talk about, and they laid another egg against a bad team again. So howl or foul, another brutal loss to Toronto. Was a players only meeting necessary to reset the vibes after another just terrible loss?
It's tough. I'm going to say foul, even though I feel like us as a fan base, we might need a fans only meeting at this point. I don't know. You get those words mixed up. That might sound bad, but we need a fans only meeting to kind of reset ourselves. But for the team, I think it's a little early for that. I think that'll be saved. A players only meeting will be saved for when we're closer to under 500 after this West Coast stretch. Now, obviously, every game matters. Almost being the Celtics, that's great, but losing to Raptors, not great. But the ones that really matter are going to be these conference games, and we have a lot of them upcoming. And so I think what happens in that stretch of games will determine whether or not we really need that players only meeting. We may need to go hire Patrick Beverley, come in here and get on them for something, bring them back over to this side of the ocean. But the team still seems to have some sort of a maturity to them to address things openly with each other. I know after that Raptors game where there was a whole Rudy versus Julius Randle a situation on the court of Rudy not getting out of the paint because he didn't get the ball and getting a technical foul on that. They addressed it the very next day. In fact, I remember Chris Hine, who was attending, I think, media availability, asked before you had a chance to ask Rudy Gobert about it. Julius Randle came in and said that, no, we talked about it. It's all good. I didn't pass him the ball. Let's move on. So it seems like it's not something that's just sitting there as an elephant in the room. They addressed it immediately. And so I think that maturity hopefully will help them be able to avoid having to do this whole all right, we're putting our drawing a line in the sand here. And this is it. This is a turning point for us where it's hopefully they can figure it out before. So I don't think it's necessary yet. What about you, Ryan?
Yeah, I think the term players only meeting or stuff like that is overplayed. So however they want to address it or not address it is fine. But I'm gonna say how about just kind of to resetting the vibes in the sense of they need to, the players and the coaches too, but mostly the players to me need to have some self reflection about why this is happening. This is their 3rd straight loss. The last 3 times they played a bad team, they've lost. 2 in Portland and now to Toronto. Both of those teams were struggling extremely and both incredibly hurt. These are if it was one loss, you could wipe it off as bad shooting or good shooting by them or whatever. But they've just had terrible performances, and they had a bad one kind of before that in Chicago too, where they were trailing for 3.5 quarters of that one. And it's very clearly an effort or energy thing. And I usually hate talking about that because
you do.
So often find that it's just this team is playing bad. It must be effort. It must be losing teams always look like they don't have effort, but they've clearly it's not all effort, but attention to detail, focus,
Absolutely.
just hard. I even know what it is, but they clearly are not meshing like they should. And the biggest example of that was the play you're talking about, where Rudy seals. I think he's got Scotty Barnes under the rims. Randle, he's wide open for the ball. Randle looks him off, and Rudy, for lack of a better word, pouts on purpose, grabs a 3, takes a turnover, and Ant is yelling at him. It's ultimately it was a bit overblown in the sense of it was still tie game, and they just completely collapsed from that point forward. I almost kind of disagree with people saying that was the reason they lost. It's no, I think that was a symptom of larger issues that it happened to come right at Toronto's run. But ultimately, like, Rudy did not play well. And like, my question with the whole thing is like, is what Rudy is doing there, is that part of the offense? Is that supposed to be something is Rudy supposed to be trying to seal smaller defenders under the rim? Are people supposed to pass in the ball? Because if that is part of the offense, then Randall, you have to pass him the ball. If that's something like you're trying to get to, you have to pass him the ball. If it's not something that the offense is trying to get to, then Rudy, you cannot. I mean, even if it was, Rudy can't purposely take it. Like, that's just unacceptable. And in retrospect, he probably should have been pulled off the court, at least for a possession or two. But if that is not part of the offense, then Rudy, you need to get to the part of the offense that it is. And if the players don't know the answer to those questions, then it's on the coaching staff, the fact that they don't know what is supposed to be going on offensively.
Yeah, I like what you said about reflection and attention to detail. I mean, I think that reflection piece specifically to that play for Julius, I understand it's his first time playing with Rudy Gobert, maybe still getting used to seeing him. I almost want to say that on that specific play, he saw Rudy down low and he saw Rudy Gobert posting up down low as if that wasn't his teammate. That he was seeing as like, that's Julius, or that's Rudy Gobert, the guy that can't catch the ball. I'm not going to pass it to him. He didn't see him as, hey, that's my teammate. I'm supposed to get it down to him. Maybe he could draw a foul or whatever. He didn't have that trust, right? So I think there is that piece, that reflection that's there. And I don't think that there's a huge, battle between Rudy Gobert and Julius Randle. I don't think that's a bit overblown because even right after that play, he passed the ball to him technically 4 times. I mean, Jim Peterson talked about it on the broadcast against the Celtics, but right after a couple of possessions after that, he passes the ball to Rudy, who bobbles it and turns it over. And then right after that, again, the still close game. He gets Rudy the ball, he gets fouled, shoots 2 free throws, and then right out, almost literally the next possession, he gets him the ball again, who gets him an open dunk. So I think he knows that he should be passing to Rudy, and just at that point, he kind of lost himself in it. And so, yeah, absolutely, there needs to be that attention to detail. It's not just Julius; it has to be, again, like you said with Rudy. Like, if that play isn't for you, if it was drawn up that if Julius has the mismatch with the smaller player, then Rudy, get the F out of the way. Like, don't just stand there and eat up that space right now. Right? Whatever it is that he was supposed to do, maybe he was supposed to, maybe he wasn't supposed to. But Randall, I mean, we could talk about him allowing a bunch of backdoor cuts and giving up offensive rebounds. That's another thing. But it's not even him. I mean, Ant, for example, as well too in that game. I mean, he was sleepwalking for the majority of that game. He had a stretch where he airballed 2 step back long jumpers that were just terrible shot selection, and then those sandwiched actually a really bad pass turnover that he had in between that. And so people remember, they have that recency bias, remembering, well, Ant hit those big shots late, or you look at the box score, oh, he was one of the top scorers in the game, but you miss all that part where he's just not there. He's not paying attention to detail. He's also allowing offensive rebounds. He's also not boxing out. He's also not passing the ball when he should be. So absolutely, I agree with you on that part. There does need to be reflection, if not a meeting.
Yeah, your Ant point is something that I've been thinking about for a couple weeks now, but especially after that Toronto game where he's probably the main culprit when I'm talking about effort or attention to detail. He just has not had it for 48 minutes throughout the game. And part of it is they're taking him away. They're loading up on him offensively, and so you can't just you can't just go through 2 defenders and try to score. So there's a push and pull that you got to have, that he's just kind of letting go of the rope too easily. And they need him. He is, now that they don't have Carl anymore, Mike is currently hurt, and Kyle Anderson is no longer here. Those are probably the 3 biggest leaders from last year's team you'd point to. And so especially with Mike out, but even with Mike in the lineup, Ant is the number 1 guy in the locker room, in the franchise. The whole thing is his. If he's not going to play at a first team All-NBA level, this team, they're not going to go very far. Like, they will be like the 6th seed and maybe get a first round upset, but like, that's your ceiling. They need him to play at an All-NBA first team level, and that's a extremely high bar for almost every person in the league. That would be an unfair bar to have, but especially with this version of this Wolves team, they just need him to be freaking awesome, and he's not doing that right now. And it's especially noticeable against bad teams that and it's getting a little frustrating because he kind of comes out with the same quote after all of these games. And he's right. He's analyzing the game. So Chris Hine, after this Boston game, I'm kind of more referencing, I'll just read the quote. When asked what was present tonight, the Boston game. For the Wolves, that wasn't their Thursday, the Toronto game. Anthony Edwards said, quote, "Playing hard. That's the number one thing. We just don't play hard. We come out and played hard tonight." And that's true, and it's, as from the media's perspective, from my perspective as someone who asks questions occasionally, like, that's great to hear, but you gotta, why? We gotta, like, get to that next step. Why aren't, and it's not just him, but why aren't they playing hard? Why does it come and go? And why, for years now, has it been against bad opponents? And there's a natural, like, relaxing that you do, and that's fine. It's not, you're allowed to have bad games, but I can predict it. Go listen to the pod I did with Jack. I said I was more interested in the Toronto game because I was interested to see what energy level they would come out with, and they came out with the exact thing I was worried about, and they didn't come out with the requisite whatever. And against Boston, we'll talk about that, I agree that they had, like, it wasn't the energy or the effort that was the problem, but they still lacked, like, the attention to detail on defense and stuff. So I remember Jace tweeted out the last time we did this, after one or both of the Portland games. Jace Frederick tweeted out something like basically what I was saying. These are good quotes. These are, like, there's correct thing to say. But at a certain point, and it's been years largely, you have to go out and put your money where your mouth is. Unfortunately, they don't have a bad team on their schedule pretty much the rest of November and December. So we're not going to get a great answer to that, to, like, what the solution is against bad teams. But at a certain point, he's got to perform in every game, and not just against teams like Boston, or if Phoenix and Sacramento have their players.
Yeah, I mean, you hit the nail on the head. I mean, you're the man now, right, Ant? You're the man. Then be the man. Then, like, last season, we saw that he was able to put up great performances throughout the entire season. He nearly made, first team All NBA. The product on the court can be there. The numbers can be there. But now that you're the man, you have to lead other than just what you do on the basketball court as well too. Like, if you're lacking energy and you're just giving up straight line drives, if you're complaining to the refs a ton, like, people are going to look at that. People are going to be like, oh, well, if Ant's our leader and he's doing that, then, why do I need to do that? Right. I mean, God forbid. I mean, we're not going to see, it's early, but I don't know if I'm going to expect that from Julius Randle, from, not complaining to the ref and being the leader, emotionally, of the team. And so Ant has to be that. If you're going to be the man, it's time to show us. I mean, I remember that first game against the Lakers, a season opener, where, he's clapping, he's trying to get his team involved, right? He's like, yo, come on, guys, wake up. Like, where was that against Toronto? Where was that against Portland? Right? Obviously, it was a marquee game, season opener, national TV against LeBron, and so he's putting it on. And we saw him also up his energy and effort today against the Celtics. Defending champs, he wants to make a point. Well, every game has to be a point made by Ant. You can't just be like, all right, well, I'm gonna just kind of coast and wait until the very end. I mean, that worked against the Kings, that worked against the Suns. Thank God they were missing some important players, but it has to be energy the whole way. And I absolutely agree with you that Ant definitely has to, he has to grow up. We have to move past this. Oh, well, he's still young, or, oh, this is his first season as the man. It's like, no, like, there's no more of that. Like, he has to mature up. And I feel like he knows. I mean, he's saying the right things. Are we seeing it out there? I don't know. There was even a spurt, even in the Celtics game. Again, I'm not saying he has to be perfect 24/7, but he needs to be damn near perfect if he wants the team to get to where they want to be. I remember even in the Celtics game today, he looked a bit slow at one point. He gave up a couple wide open 3-point attempts, and then he came back the other way, he dribbled it off his own foot out of bounds, and then he took a bad 2-point mid range shot like right after that, and they started getting really selfish. I mean, I think that was when the Wolves were down close to about 15 or so in that third quarter, and he was just getting eaten up by Derek White, and it was like, bro, like, okay, like, being the man is like, all right, well, I'm gonna take every shot. It's like, get your players to play the right way. I remember at the end of the first quarter, he had a beautiful drive where it was a 2-for-1 situation. He drove into the paint instead of jacking up a quick three. And not only did he just attack the paint, but he dropped it off beautifully for Rudy Gobert, who converted the 2-for-1 to get them another possession after that. And that was like, okay, that's the way to lead. Lead your teammates. Don't just lead with your shot. So I agree with you, Ryan.
Yeah. And to be clear, Anthony Edwards is a good leader, and he's a great teammate. So, and I know it from being in the locker room. Like, guys love playing with him. Guys get along with him. Him and Rudy get along. Every time someone else, after the Randall buzzer beater, he was all praising Julius Randle. The couple games where Nah has come in and saved their butts late in the game, he call him Gorilla Nuts Nikhil. Sorry for the picture in your head there, but he is always, Jaden too, if Jaden has a good game. Like, that stuff is great. The soft, quote unquote, soft leadership and not, it's like a term like the,
not the Jimmy Butler style of leadership
right,
per
like,
se, right?
I'm trying how to explain it, but like the stuff that doesn't show up on the court necessarily, he's great with that stuff. And so it's really like on court leadership and on court setting examples that just haven't been there. And it's, again, it's not just him. There's other players. Randall, you mentioned earlier. I didn't watch the Boston game live, but I watched it knowing the result. So it's easier. It's like rewatching it on the first try, but like I just noticed I picked out half a dozen plays. Like that bucket happened because Randall misses the assignment. That bucket happened, and it's been like that all year. And that's, again, it's not effort. It's like focus and attention to detail that just hasn't been there from the team wide. And I think if that were to happen more from their top player, then it would hopefully trickle down to the rest of the rotation. All right. Well, that's the Toronto game. Another just brutal loss there. So they dropped to 8-7 there, and that pretty much ends. The Wolves had a very soft first 15 games of the season, especially when they got Phoenix without KD. They got Sacramento without DeRozan. Portland didn't have half their roster for both games. They went 8-7 during that very, very soft stretch, and unfortunately, from in a short-term perspective, that's probably going to hamper them the rest of the year from a wins-loss perspective, because now here comes the big boys. And the first one of that was Boston. They played fine. If they had just taken care of business against Toronto and lost in this fashion, we would all just shrug and go, okay, hard fought, whatever. And we're probably going to do that to a certain extent, even when they did lose. But howl or foul, Leo, Celtics loss was a moral victory or reason for optimism after a 2-point loss.
Those are the scarlet words, right? Moral victory. We hate hearing those, but I will have to say, with a little bit of hesitation, I'm going to say how it was a moral victory in some respects. There's obviously still things to address. We talk about the rebounding, we talk about the defense, we talk about a number of several topics, but we did see the reliance against a strong championship contender once again. I mean, I know that maybe the Suns and the Kings missing key players don't make them a strong championship contender, but that's what we saw from them, was that they were able to battle back late. And so when they were down close to about 20 points in the second half, I was thinking like, all right, if history tells us anything, it will tell us that this Wolves team will try and fight back, and they will battle back, and they'll make it close. But I still had that doubt in my head where I was like, well, I mean, this is the Celtics still, and they're pretty close to full strength. Obviously, they're missing Porzingis, but aside from that, I mean, they obviously were a championship caliber team without him anyways. I was like, okay, maybe they won't bounce back versus this team, but they did. They played really strong, and I was like, all right, well, here we come. This is what we're used to seeing. And so, again, it is kind of confirming that belief that we had, that's been mentioned by a lot of people before, that this iteration, the Timberwolves, will play a little bit similar to the 2022, 2023, the Wolves back, the Jared Vanderbilt team, where, they'll play up or play down to the competition. They'll do what they can. Sorry, not the Jared Vanderbilt team. I'm talking about the first Rudy Gobert team, where they'll play up against a good competition, and then they'll lose to the Pistons a bunch of times or lose to the Magic, right? So, I think we are seeing that in fruition. And so, it gives us belief that, okay, we know what the ceiling of this team can be. And I think for me, that's where that moral victory is that, okay, well, we didn't just get completely smacked and not be able to even contend. And it's not like, the Celtics had a mediocre game. They were hitting a lot of threes, but they started missing late. Jaylen Brown had a freaking nuclear game where he was freaking in a playing video game mode against us. No one could stop him, no matter how crazy of a shot or how contested of a shot he was taking. You look at some of these things, and I think there are a lot of good things to take from it. We'll hop into some of those specific things later, but I do walk away feeling better than I did after that Toronto game, obviously. What about you?
Sure. Yeah, I don't disagree necessarily with anything you said, but in terms of moral victory, I'm going to go foul on that. The game was fine. Close loss to a very good team. They covered the spread, I guess, if that's something that interests you. But to me, I still saw many of the same issues that were hampering them pretty much all year. Not the effort thing, which has kind of been their issue against lesser teams, or that specifically was fine. Like Ant said, they let me go back to the quote. They played hard. I don't disagree with that, but the defense is still just making a lot of mistakes, just missed rotations, over helping on situations. They are still struggling to find like backup minutes. Minot came in there and was just defensively was not immediately kind of missed 2 rotations, and Finch kind of scrapped the rest of the minute minutes that maybe he had planned. I don't know. But Randall sticks out specifically. Transition, just not getting back. Losing. There's a Derek White late 3. Go watch that again. He just loses White and gets an open 3. And so, like, on a big picture sense, I don't disagree that, like, if you feel better about, I mean, their performance was much better against Boston than was against Toronto. They, without the Wolves, without their point guard, kept in it with them. Like, they played well. I don't, like, if they keep playing like that, they'll probably beat Houston on Tuesday. So, like, that's fine. But some of the issues that are some of the larger issues that have been there basically this whole season, to me, still showed up, and it's like they just don't make it easy on themselves. And they a few more better contests on 3-point shots, a made free throw or 2 here, some not like a few more makes here. Like, they're just making it really hard on themselves. And while there's a lot of like structural issues that they need to figure out, like at a certain point, like, can we just make it easy on yourself? Make a tough bucket. Make I don't know. Moral victory is not what I would use, but maybe a reason for optimism a little bit, I'd be fine with.
Yeah, I think that if we continue to see this, then hopefully it's a trend, right? And I think so far this season showed that's not a trend, but that if they're starting to scale up and trend up and be able to get better habits in this, then that's great. As I was watching the game live, I was in one of my many group chats that I'm in, talking to one of my really good friends known as Boston on Canasupis and on Twitter. He said that the Wolves are playing a faith-based defense right now. And I thought that was pretty funny in the sense that the Celtics, yes, they were hitting a lot of tough threes in the beginning, but the Wolves did dodge quite a bit of bullets later on. There were a lot of open threes that the Wolves just weren't rotating out to. And again, specifically Naz and Julius Randle and Anthony Edwards, I think, were the biggest culprits, not just being able to rotate out once the Celtics penetrated deep or had the ball and, was spreading it around, rotating, just moving the ball, swinging it around. The Wolves were late getting back. And a lot of it's just like, all right, well, we hope they miss. And again, the Celtics aren't a team to play that game with. Jim Peter said one of his keys of the game was don't take the bait, basically don't get in a pissing contest from 3 with the Celtics. And early on, they looked like they were trying to, and that was not going well. But later on, once they really started changing, attacking, they were attacking the paint, they were getting paint buckets, and they were, making smart plays. I think that's really when they made that run. And even at the end of the game as well, too, they weren't just jacking up threes. I mean, Dante hit a 3, Anthony Edwards hit a 3, but for the most part, they were playing sound offense. They were just a couple inches short of Naz Reid stealing another game away from the Celtics that they kind of really had no business having a chance to even win. They were down 19, I think, in the third quarter. And I don't know if Naz Reid even got the shot off time. They counted it as a shot attempt, but every replay I saw looked like it wasn't off on time. But but you like the process. When you look back on it and you want the wins and losses, and it's like, all right, well, just take it. Just take tie, go for the foul. You've done it so many times this year already. But instead, he tried to make the smart play. He got the swing, and it was a little bit late. And Naz has been really, really off. We'll talk about him in a little bit. But, so I think even how it ended, it was like, yeah, it's tough loss, but not, not too bad in terms of optimism wise. So feeling okay.
Yep, they did go back later. I don't know what they called it in the moment. They did go back later, and Naz Reid's attempt did not count.
Oh, they waved it off.
Okay. Yep, the Wolves technically did not get a shot attempt off at the end there. Probably in retrospect, easy to say now. Probably Anthony Edwards just taking the semi-open layup he kind of had under the rim. Probably would have been better, but easy to say now with the result in hand.
Sure.
Yeah, I thought it was a good game, well played game. I'm not sure if this is a good or bad thing, but like basically three stretches, like the beginning of the first, second, third quarters were if you take those away, they outplayed or they outscored Boston. Other than those, it's a little bit annoying that like Jaylen Brown hasn't hit anything all year and then just lights it up to start the game. And that's like, if he misses 2 of those instead of making all of his attempts, then maybe the Wolves win. I don't know. But unfortunately, when you lose games at Toronto and Portland, you lose the benefit of the doubt with complaining about shot variance, because you those games are where you build up your defense against shot variance. And so when you punt the games you should win, then you're liable to open yourself up to shot variance.
The two longest road losing streaks continues now in the league. So, there's the Wolves not winning in Toronto for, 20 years or whatever, and then in 20 games or whatever it is. And now the Wolves continue to not win in Boston in almost, past 20 years now as well, too. So, they had a chance to right at least one of those and they failed to do so. So that's a bit of a bummer.
The Toronto one is crazy because like they beat him down in Tampa when like basically the worst Raptors team probably well, not really. Like Toronto's had some bad teams in the past 20 years. I mean, so the Wolves obviously, but like that is just crazy that they have not been able to win in Canada. I almost wish I did have the Wolves played down in Mexico. Like I would, it'd be hilarious if the Wolves had more a win in Mexico more recently than they had a win in Canada.
Probably, but Ryan, you have to understand. I mean, you're a vet. There's no level of suctitude that, in terms of records, that the Wolves have not explored before. It's about
Yeah,
par
I'm
for
just
the
saying,
course,
like the
unfortunately.
Boston one makes sense. Boston's had
Right? Yeah, they've been
good
good
teams
for yeah,
almost that whole stretch. Like,
yeah.
yeah,
I mean, we don't need to go deep into this, but just how many good teams have there been in the past 20 years of Timberwolves' existence, right? I mean, we're talking about like five or less, probably. So it's been rough. It's been rough.
yeah. But even if you went in there with a 25% win percentage, like, to lose a 25% probability 20 times in a row is still an incredibly low proposition.
I bet you if Johnny Flynn was healthy for a couple more seasons, they would have won a couple in Toronto.
There's a lot of things they needed. They need about 4 championships from Johnny Flynn to make that selection
He
hold up.
had to go there.
All right, we'll kind of keep talking about this Boston game a little bit. Topic 3, Mike Conley out again, right? Or he's got a sprain in his big toe. A lot of in football they kind of call it turf toe. That's what this injury is. So take your pick on the wording there. But against Toronto, they started Nah, which is what they did when Mike sat out the second end of a back-to-back against Portland. But today they went with Dante, just trying to find basically any good point guard minutes while Mike is out. But Rob Dillingham came in and gave them some good minutes. Certainly his best game of the season so far. Rob had 16 points on 6 of 10 shooting, adding an assist as well. So kind of howler foul on the idea of Rob Dillingham getting more minutes as the primary backup point guard.
I'm going Hal, and that's pretty straightforward and easy for me on this one. Now, I'm not saying Rob Dillingham is ready to be the primary backup point guard playing well for 20 minutes a night. That's not what I'm saying, but I do think that we have to find out what we have with them. There's not much left meat on the bone in terms of looking for players on the trade market or trying to sign someone else, call someone up. I mean, I don't know if Dacian Nix is going to be the savior to our backup point guard issues, but Nall really struggled in that game against Toronto, and he struggled for some time as well too. Dante had a decent game shooting the ball today, but he had a lot of just kind of, even in the Toronto game, the last 2 games, Dante's had a lot of games where I'm like, wait, I thought he was supposed to be better as like a primary ball handler and distributing the ball. And he over penetrates and he just loses sight of where he's trying to go with the ball oftentimes. And so I think the two of them have really made a better case for Rob, even outside of him having his best game of his career tonight. And so I think Chris Finch talked about this early on, is that with Rob Dillingham as a rookie, I mean, we're not expecting a 19-year-old to contribute winning basketball every game, but he was saying that 1 out of 3 games thing, right? If 1 out of every 3 games, we hope you have a good game, then that's good. And then one bad game, and then one average game. Well, we're not going to know. We're not going to get those 1 out of 3 good games if he doesn't even get a chance to play meaningful minutes in that. So we're starting to see him more, which is great. He had a really great first stretch against the Toronto Raptors game where he came in and he scored immediately, that strong attack, and he had a handful of deflections. He had a beautiful dime to Naz Reid. His second stint was a little bit tougher, ended in him rolling his, I think it was his right ankle when he accidentally just kind of, I think Davion Mitchell fell on him. But I was really glad to see that he was able to suit up and play today. And he obviously looked no worse for the wear coming out today. He was firing. He was just as aggressive as he was. And there are some defensive mistakes. I know that there was at one point on the Celtics game, it was during their huge run where it was on a leak out and Derek White was wide open under Rob, just goes flying out here and jumps all over Derek White, and they don't call a foul somehow. And then he gives him the most gentle slap on the wrist as Derek White goes up and one. And those are those rookie mistakes, right? Like he'll learn. I'm not, too mad at him about that, but I do really like seeing what he's doing. He's really energizing the group with this play. That's what Jim Peterson said on the broadcast as well, too, is that you saw the bench going crazy every time that he was making a good move or he was taking it to the rim, or he was being aggressive, or even on defense, you see him battling. I mean, I think that's what's so stark, is that you see someone of his stature fighting so hard on defense. And though maybe the form may not be perfect and maybe his positioning isn't always right, he's trying to figure it out. but he's playing with energy. And Ryan, you talked about that earlier in our segment about the Wolves are missing that energy and they're not playing with it. Well, if Rob can bring that at the very least, then that's something that we should really explore. And I hope Chris Finch continues to give him a little bit of leash on that. I'm a little bit worried about Mike Conley's turf toe. That is an injury that often does linger, especially at someone at Mike's age and the position that he plays. Is that, he has to put a lot of pressure. He gets a lot of pressure with the ball, attacking and falling down and all that stuff. He sudden changes in direction, the way he plays. I'm a little bit worried that this may linger longer. So I think we really do need to start exploring playing Rob a little bit more. So at the end of the day, I'm going Hal. Dillingham should continue to get more minutes as a backup point guard.
Yeah, we'll see what sort of injury update we get for Mike when they come back home on Tuesday, whether that's an injury report that lists Mike as in, out, or questionable, or just pregame media-wise when the full cavalcade of Wolves reporters is there to ask Finch. We'll see. Hopefully he's able to play on Tuesday, or maybe they sit him out on the front end of the back-to-back Tuesday, Wednesday to get him an extra day so he can play Wednesday and Friday, but we'll see on that. As far as Rob, I'm in agreement how they gotta. I mean, certainly when Mike is out, there's obvious minutes for him right there. But even when Mike rejoins the rotation, I think there's enough, especially because they're not going to play Mike 30 plus minutes. I don't think he's probably going to stay at 26, 28 on the best of nights, I think. So I think they gotta. I part of it is like what you said, like they got to figure out what they have. Like you spent a pick and a swap on him, like you gotta give him every chance as soon as possible to succeed, whether that's even this year or next year. But I just think he should be their primary backup point guard, and he doesn't have to play every single minute that Mike is off the floor, but they should be getting him 10 to 12 minutes, I think, a night. I will push back on if people are kind of saying like that's going to help them win games. I unfortunately don't. He's a 19-year-old small guard, and those are a player type that don't often provide value, at least like average. But I think what you can do is there's going to be matchups like Finch, like you mentioned, like he's going to have good, bad, and otherwise games. Give him a stretch early in the first half. If the matchup, or if he's playing well, you can keep playing him. You can get him up closer to 20 minutes or something. But when those matchups or he's not performing like you want, then you sit him late in games or whatever. But ultimately, I don't think him getting DNPs every single night is the way to go, especially when Ingles clearly isn't someone that you're going to trust to play a whole bunch other than inbounds plays, which obviously he got the assist on that Randall game
That's
winner,
true.
so we can have him inbound the ball.
Where was he on today's game?
Yeah, should have gone to him. Although the inbound was fine, and especially if Minot is not going to be someone. I mean, it stinks. They hyped him up all preseason as having a great summer, and I'm sure he did, and it just kind of hasn't come together so far in the NBA. It stinks for Minot because obviously, if you're talking about effort, that is not an issue with Josh, but just kind of hasn't worked out. Obviously, still time there, but yeah, Rob was impressive, but I also noticed there were plays where he was the one that was giving up buckets. But the Celtics are the best team in the NBA, so maybe that isn't the bar that we should judge Rob by.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I mean, if Rob can get loose against the perimeter defense that the Celtics have, then I mean, it's obviously showing that he has the skill and ability to belong in this league. Again, he's probably not going to shoot 6 for 10 every night, but the fact that he did it against, a Derek White and, a Jaylen Brown that's out there, solid defensive guards that could really load up on him. They're bigger than him. Even Peyton Pritchard looks huge next to him in terms of like girth. And so pause. But at the same time, I think that, there's a lot of hope there with Rob playing the way that he does and getting the team energized. I mean, do you think the Wolves climb back from down 19 if it weren't for Rob's stretch bridging that third and fourth quarter together? I don't know, but he definitely helped tonight. And I think with such a young player like that, where so much I think rides on his confidence. You saw that the more confident he got, the better that he got. And so, having a good game where yes, it resulted in a 2-point loss, but he was very much productive out there. Hopefully he can ride that confidence and that Finch gives him that leash to go out there and continue to rock a bit more. And so I love seeing that. I think that was probably the most optimistic thing I had to take going away from this game was, Rob's development, feeding, a huge comeback attempt against one of the best teams or the best team in the NBA right now.
Yep, and look forward to him getting more minutes. To the extent of which that happens will be interesting to see, but I would expect him to be in the rotation in some capacity moving forward. Next player we'll kind of look at here, Naz Reid, the namesake of our podcast here, has unfortunately had 2 very rough games, especially shooting wise. 3 for 17 in his last 2 games, and just his defense has continued to not provide value. It's been a rough stretch. Obviously, I don't like he's going to rebound. He'll start playing better at some point, but it just kind of brings up this question we've had all year. Howl or foul on whether or not the Wolves should bring in some front court help. And to me, I'm just foul because they need Naz to play better. I think it kind of gone over it ad nauseum almost at this point, but like it kind of wasn't fair to put him back at backup center when they were expecting him almost to play small forward this year. And the Cat trade has kind of put him at center, and those minutes haven't worked out, and they'll continue to work on that. But ultimately, I just sure there's like a 8-minute a night backup center role that they could try to find, and if they throw a second round pick at a team and they get someone great, that's fine. But ultimately, like from a high level playoff spot, they're just going to need Naz Reid to play better. And obviously for the playoffs, Rudy will play closer to 40 minutes than 30. So like some of those backup center minutes will get filled by Rudy. But like regular season standpoint, they just need him to play better. It's kind of as simple as that. And I just kind of worry that like the defensive issues are causing some offensive struggles as well.
Yeah, I agree with you. I'm going foul on this one as well too, and kind of branching off what you were saying, his offensive struggles affecting his defense. There's a little bit of that going around. Even with Jaden McDaniels, we saw that earlier this year as well too. Is that when he gets in foul trouble, he's getting really frustrated. He visibly lets that affect his offense, and he's not shooting it well. He's making bad decisions, things like that. And so I don't know whatever disease that is that's going through the Wolves. Like they got to address that. They got to figure that out because Naz is out there and he's slumping his head every foul. He's kind of complaining. Teams are trying to, push him, away from the refs, and he's not walling up correctly. He's not contest. He's not going straight up and down. His rotations late. He's not getting out, to perimeter where he needs to be. And so, yeah, fair is fair. Where, as you mentioned, that wasn't maybe the role that he was planning on playing going into this year. But he's a good enough player, and if he wants to get paid the way he wants to get paid in this offseason, then he's got to fix that. I mean, I saw this, I think, going around social media where this may, if you want to twist it in some weird way to be a positive problem for the Wolves, is that all right? Well, if he's going to play this bad, then we should be able to afford him over this summer and be able to keep him, right? Now, obviously that's a long ways away, but I really hope that he does figure out. And I have faith that he will. It's just a tough stretch. Every player's have tough stretches. I think by the end of the year, we will forget about the fact that he went a combined, one, or was it 3 of 17 in the last 2 games alone. And I also say foul and that the Wolves need help finding front court because there's similar to before, there's just not much help out there. There's no savior that's incoming. Jesse Edwards, he's had a couple good games in the G League for the Iowa Wolves, who I believe are 5-1 right now or 6-1, so they're doing great. But Jesse Edwards is not coming in and going to be playing meaningful minutes. Maybe Luka Garza, he's been sitting on the bench. He's graduated from the G League fully, I think now. And again, I'm not necessarily thinking that he's going to come in and fix the issues that we're having, which is primarily on defense right now. So the team has to buy into the defense, really. And I'm looking at Naz, I'm looking at Julius, because we all know when Rudy goes out, that interior defense is really bad. And that's affecting the perimeter defense because the rotations are just all jacked up. And they always have to go back to their really crap zone defense. It's just not effective at all. So Elson Turner and Chris Finch, they really have to get their players to buy in on this. And I've seen enough of this so far to say that I don't think it's because Julius Randle's out of shape from his injury. I don't think it's because Julius Randle doesn't know his teammates. I think he himself, you mentioned this in the beginning, has to reflect and look, I am being caught ball watching a ton. I'm giving up a ton of back cuts. I'm giving up a ton of offensive rebounds. I'm not rotating back. I mean, there was one play, I believe it was in the Toronto Raptors game, where someone missed a shot. I forgot who it was. I think it was Jaden McDaniels. He went up for a dunk and he missed it. And then Jaden, Rudy, and Julius Randle, they all tried to surround Dick under their own basket. And it was just a really, really poor attempt to cobble together a steal or a jump ball. Grady literally just dribbled out of it. And that led to that alley-oop that ended up putting the Toronto Raptors up 9. And that was kind of the end of the game at that point. It was because they weren't getting back on defense. They're so concerned about, let me get it back on offense. And so, yeah, I think there needs to be a lot of reflection done within the team to really help their front court. I don't think it's necessarily a player that's going to have to come.
Yep. Well, if we're talking about kind of reflecting, let's kind of look forward, I guess. The Wolves have started the season 8-8, not where they'd like to be, obviously, but kind of we're getting close to the point in the season where you can kind of start to bank on some numbers long term. But what do you think? Is it time to start adjusting our expectations of? I mean, I think like before the season, we all would have said like this is a team that can win the Western Conference and compete for a title. Kind of howl or foul on adjusting those expectations to something lower.
I'm saying foul. I'm saying no, that I do not think we need to adjust our expectations for this team. Nor is that just my personal philosophy where it's like, oh, well, we're not making the progress or we weren't at where we thought we'd be 16 games into the season. Now it's time for us to change it. I think my expectations, at least coming in, is that at the very least, we're a second round playoff team or better. Right. I mean, making the conference finals again with big new changes, I think that would have been, obviously great. And making the finals is like the ultimate. And so I still think that we can be a second round team, especially when we look at the way that they performed against the Celtics, which was, I think, a really good measuring stick. That's the first real contending team that we played against this season, and they showed that they could still do it. So I don't think moving the goalpost is really in my DNA, nor do I think I'm thoroughly ready to believe that we're going to fall short of our expectations. I don't think we need to readjust. I mean, last year really taught me. There were so many times where I'm like, oh, the Wolves are the 1 seed, but like, they're going to fumble it. They're going to give it up. They're going to end up having a really bad second year and flame out in the first round against the Suns. But last year taught me that I need to have belief in this team, and not just the Timberwolves, but a Timberwolves team led by Anthony Edwards, that we have to believe in that team. And so I'm still believing. 8-8 obviously is not great, but if you literally look at some of the other teams that have been playing that we're in competition with, the Wolves right now are 8-8, which puts them at 11th in the Western Conference. They're in a game and a half away from the 6th seed being out of the play-in. Now, unfortunately, they're also a game and a half from being the 13th seed as well, too, because Portland, surprisingly, is only somehow a game and a half behind us as well, too. And Sacramento is a half game behind us. And so you look at some of the other teams, I don't think we need to readjust because there's such a cluster of teams that are somewhat underperforming this year, and they're kind of cannibalizing themselves. And so I think that's a good thing, and that we have plenty of time to still turn it around. And so I still believe in that. I mean, look at the Kings today. They lost to the Nets. Yesterday, the Warriors lost to the Spurs. There was the Laker team I remember that was doing so well, lost to the full strength Nuggets team, well, minus Aaron Gordon, of course. There's a lot of Western Conference teams that have been beating teams that they probably shouldn't be beating. And so we're all kind of falling in this middle area. And so I think one good stretch, a couple weeks of good stretch of basketball for the Wolves can really put them up to be in position to make a second round run or deeper. So I'm saying foul. I'm not readjusting. What about you, Ryan?
Yeah, I agree on foul readjusting expectations just yet, but I think it's important to point out like this team right now is not nearly as good as it was 12 months ago. And it's fair to I think kind of a frustration I get with with uh with internet fans, and I'm one of them too, but is like, well, they keep playing like this, they're not going to do X. It's like, yeah, you're right. If they keep playing like excuse my language, dog shit, they're they're not going to go anywhere. But like I don't think they're going to keep playing like this. I just don't. They have too much talent. And if they do, I guess you get to be right that the team is crap. Good for you. But they have problems, and I don't think it's good to like just like wave them off as like it's a bad stretch, obviously. But like I don't see many things that are like unfixable or like institutionally wrong with the team. I see things that are correctable and might be difficult to correct, and maybe they won't do it, and that's how it goes. But I think like their ceiling is just as high as it was with last year's team. Maybe their margin of error, or certainly the regular season margin of error, is much lower now, but maybe the trade lowers their margin of error. But I think that's what's going on a lot is a lot of people, either basketball reasons or just they like Cat. They didn't like the trade, and so what this recent stretch is kind of it's everything you would worry would go wrong, and that's fine. I just part of me is just like, where was this love for Cat when he was on this team? Because what
Right.
I remember was no one liking them. All the Wolves fans were not all of them, but a lot of casual Wolves fans were jumping on the national discourse about Katasoff. Weirdly, you cared about his tone of voice very much. I don't where to me it's a lot of those same people that are now thinking Cat is the best thing since sliced bread as the Knicks are bottom 10 defense again. Like I just to me a little bit you people are allowed to not like the trade, and it's obviously It's early, but it's not paying dividends so far. But I think just like a little bit of perspective on like I just wish Cat would have. I've said this while he was here, and he should have been beloved at this town. And for whatever reason, and I honestly don't want to go over those reasons because it's not even worth it. But for whatever reason, he just never got to be that, and it just kind of stinks.
Yeah. If this is, and Ryan, let me ask you real quick. Do you think this is a worse the Wolves are going to play all season? Is right how they're playing right now.
Better be. It
Right.
better be.
It better be. It better be. But I would bet that this is probably the worst basketball that they're going to be playing all season. Now, could it get worse with injury or something like that? Knock
They
on
could have
wood.
single games
Yeah,
that are worse,
yeah,
obviously.
yeah. Single games, but I think as a stretch, in terms of them trying to figure it out, I'm glad that they're going through this right now. Let's figure it out now. If their floor is an 8-8 team, then okay, then that's fine. But that means that their ceiling is a lot higher than that. This certainly isn't the best the Wolves are going to play all year. That's for sure. So with that said, yeah, you're right. And maybe not, but I do believe that they will be better. They will get better. And so I think with 8-8 at this time, with the problems that we're having, that as you mentioned are very fixable, I think that's okay. And there will be things that are going to be out of our control, things that we don't expect to happen. The Wolves suddenly trading for Ben Simmons, or I don't know. Any crazy number of things can happen right now. But that being said, I still am bullish on the team, and we'll talk again next week. After this, Western Conference or Western Conference string of opponents, are midway through. But I think it's going to be proof's going to be in the pudding there. So I think we'll learn a lot.
Yep, I agree. Well, let's move on to Apex Alpha. I have a cheeky one. My Apex Alpha for the Wolves this week is none other than Taylor Swift. We're just gonna kind of go right after the Swiftie market here. But so interesting thing happened. So there was no Wolves media in Toronto. I was not there because I don't really travel to games, not in my budget. But none of the Wolves media was there. Chris Hine is normally at most, if not all, road games, but he was unable to make it because Taylor Swift had a concert in Toronto, I believe, the next night, and the hotel market was ate up by the Swifties. So it's just kind of a lesson. To me, it's where media is at right now. That the Wolves only have one traveling media member. That's really just one, maybe 1.5. Dane goes to a lot of road games as well, but there was no one there to ask questions after a game like Toronto where you'd really like to have some questions. So it's just it's an interesting thing to me, and it's a reason to try not to complain too much about paying for media, because if you want people to be asking the questions, you hear it all the time, like, you guys don't ask the tough questions. Well, sometimes because of money and whatnot, there is no one there to ask questions. So yeah, go buy a Star Tribune subscription to read Chris's stuff, and maybe next time you have to pay out the butt to go to Toronto, he's able to do that based on subscriptions.
Yeah, luckily the Wolves haven't fallen to the Hawks level of getting a whole playoff game rescheduled because of a Janet Jackson concert. That happened a handful of years ago, and so yeah, at least the Wolves are still able to play their game in Toronto. But yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, Swift is leading the Wolves this year, and it's not a high bar this week, but Taylor Swift is your Apex Alpha. I can respect that. Make sure tweet out, like you said, all the Swifties. We're plugging y'all. We believe in you. What is her? Does she have a name for her? Is it Swifties? Is that what it is? Like her?
Sure.
Yeah. Well,
And Chiefs fans now, I guess.
Yeah, we got love. All right. Well, yeah. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say Wolves will try to shake it off.
Yeah.
There you go. Apex Alpha, Leo. Who you got?
I got Jaden McDaniels. Jaden McDaniels, my Apex Alpha. I think he was the best player for the Wolves in that Toronto game. He's quietly put together a good little stretch here. Even the Boston game, you look at the box score and you see Jaden McDaniels' numbers. You see that Jaden went, 4 of 13 from the field. He only had, 10 points. He was in foul trouble. He had 5 fouls, but he did a really great job in this Boston game as well, too. I mean, he was primarily assigned on Jason Tatum, who went 8 of 21. I mean, he had a couple crazy 3-pointers, but he was defended pretty well. Jaden was out there and he hit a couple big shots late as well, too. And so I love to see that confidence because, again, I think that was one of the many things that was really plaguing the Wolves early in the season. It was like, well, where's Jaden? Where's Jaden out there? And I think we're starting to see him a bit more. He had a huge thrunk that I'll talk about later against the Celtics in the comeback attempt. But I think there's been so much made about like, oh, well, Jaden McDaniels, if he really steps into that offensive role and he really continues to maintain his defense, that'll push the Wolves to that next level. And that was almost a byproduct of the cat trades that might even open up more offensive opportunities for Jaden. And so we haven't seen that really come to fruition completely, but you're starting to see things turn a little bit. I think Jaden's starting to find his place. So I like seeing that, and I hope we get even more of that from him moving forward.
Yep, I agree. Moving on to Prey of the Week, kind of building off that Jaden McDaniels point. Who did the Timberwolves make their prey? I'm going to say themselves. They kind of ate themselves this week, just with the poor loss to Toronto and whatever loss to Boston. But there are very few players, if any, playing up to their talent level, and maybe Jaden is the one exception in the short term. He had a brutal stretch to start the year and has been largely pretty good. One of their few players they've kind of been able to bank on here the last few games. So hopefully some other players can kind of match his level here. But yeah, Leo, your prey of the week.
My prey of the week is going to a fellow late 30-year-old, Mr. Al Horford, from the Dominican Republic. Al Horford, as I mentioned earlier, he had a pretty good game today. He was pretty pumped about the Celtics win. A lot of people talked about that on social media. He was really fist pumping and get hyped after the game as his son ran onto the court. But Jada threw down a huge thrunk on him late in that fourth quarter in that comeback attempt. And I say this with all due respect, giving Al Horford a shout out, because as someone who is also in his late 30s, I still consider myself a basketball player of some sorts, maybe of the pickup variety with my fellow 30-year-old friends. But I know what it feels like to be playing basketball against a guy who's younger, that's a little bit more athletic, and doing things that back in the day that I maybe could have done, or maybe I could have stopped them. And you kind of saw Al Horford just kind of put his hands up as Jaden went up and just, kind of Jim Peterson put it as a Wilt Chamberlain-esque move where it just throws down the ball in there. And so, we had that. And just a week ago, he had that huge dunk on Mason Plumlee as well, too. But, this week, unfortunately, my man Al Horford, fellow late 30-year-old, I appreciate you. I love you, but you've been the prey for the Wolves this week.
Yeah, kind of elder abuse from Jaden. If Plumlee and Horford are the guys that he's dunking on, maybe can we get a 20-year-old? Can we throw one down on someone younger? But
hey, what they say is get up or get out the way, man.
I guess, or do a little of both and get yammed on. But yeah, that'll bring us to our 2 words. Yeah, so this is obviously 2 Words Wolves Pod, but our 2 words to kind of wrap up the discussion. Leo, what are your 2 words?
My 2 words is a gut check. It's gut check time, because I think some of y'all thought it was fun being a Wolves fan. A lot of you are new. You came here last year for good reason. They're playing great basketball. You all love Anthony Edwards. It's great. Maybe you saw Netflix starting 5 and you became a Wolves fan and you thought it was going to be fun. But, it's not always going to be that way. It's time to really test your fandom. If you want to be a Wolves fan, you want to ride with Anthony Edwards, you want to ride with, this iteration to see if they can run it back for a Western Conference Finals trip, then you're gonna have to tune in for these excruciating games. And a week ago, it was fun. We beat the Kings late, we beat the Suns late, and this week we lost the Raptors in an uninspired game, and then we lost the Celtics at a very close game where Naz missed that game winner. And so, are you gonna give up or are you gonna continue tuning in? And I think even for myself, sometimes I do have to remind myself, like, hell, I've seen worse. I'm not saying that should make right now okay that the Wolves should suck and blah blah blah. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying that I have been through worse before, and I have been gut checked a lot harder than this, and I do think that we can bounce back. And I hope that both the Wolves fans as well as the team take this gut check and move forward from.
Yeah, it's been an insane run of basketball from the Wolves. This is like this Boston loss. Well, obviously you don't like to lose. Was like the first one where it wasn't like either extremely high or extremely low after the game. Obviously, the Toronto loss is brutal. The buzzer beater Phoenix, the overtime near collapse and win against Sacramento, the 2 brutal Portland losses, and the disaster at the end of the Miami game. That is 6 straight games of just like emotional, crazy up and downs. So in a certain sense, it was good to play a game where it's just like, we lost, tough one, whatever. Ideally, we get a couple wins in that category here. That kind of leads into my 2 words. My 2 words are back home. They have a 4-game homestand now. It's their first multi-game homestand since early November, and it'll be their longest homestand of the year this far, 4 games. They get to be home for Thanksgiving. That's nice. 3 games, Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday, all packed around Thanksgiving. So I don't know if that's good or bad to kind of have all these games around Thanksgiving. Probably good. Get Thanksgiving off after a tough back-to-back. But It'll be, I think it's kind of got to like pull the reins back on like calling every single stretch of games like important now that they've kind of gotten off to a slow start. It's 4 games against teams that, while at the beginning of the season you would say that the Wolves are better than, but are all right around or above the Wolves. So they got Houston's been playing very well to start the year. Obviously, they've had 2 close wins against Sacramento. That's a back-to-back. They play a Clippers team that's above 500 without Kawhi. They still won't have Kawhi for that game. And then a Lakers team who beat them to open the season and is also playing a bit better than you would have thought coming into the season. Those are all 4 winnable games. I would, barring injury, the Wolves will likely be favorites in all 4 of those games. That, I think, kind of scrolling through, the Wolves have been, other than today, they've been favorites in pretty much every single game thus far. Maybe where they were very small underdogs to open the season against the Lakers, I think. I don't remember. It doesn't matter. But
Yeah,
it's 4 games like against teams. If we do have to lower expectations, this run of teams is kind of that next lower down bar. Houston, Sacramento, Clippers, Lakers are the teams that like those are the teams that are going to be fighting for playing spots, are going to be fighting for maybe the 6th seed in the Western Conference, and likely one of them will miss the play-in tournament in a crazy Western Conference. But it'd be nice to get some wins. And just kind of scrolling through their schedule, it is tough team after tough team, and it doesn't really let up until New Year's. So, like we've talked about, maybe that's just good at this point. I mean, you got to play those teams at some point, and they're struggling against bad teams. So let's try some good teams, I guess. I don't know, but
yeah,
I think it'll be good for them to get back home and have like 1-game homestands don't do anything. Those are not even
right.
home. Like that might as well be a road game. They did have like a bunch of off days after that Phoenix home game, so they were home for that. But like it will, hopefully they can benefit from like a long homestand here before the end of the month.
Yeah, I will say take the schedule with a grain of salt. I think right now, just given the morale of the team and even the fan base right now, it's a little bit low. So you think of that as like, my God, this is going to be terrible. We got to play all these tough games, and the Wolves have showed that they're going to be up for that. But even that said, I mean, the first game they have upcoming against the Rockets, I mean, the Rockets just lost to those Blazers, right? The same Blazers that beat the Wolves twice, right? And then they have the Kings, which, like I said earlier, they just lost to Brooklyn at home today, in Sacramento. And even, looking at the Lakers lost 2 games in a row. They got crushed by the Nuggets by, 20 some points. And they also lost to the Magic on a
Oh, that
game
was a
losing.
brutal game if
Yeah,
you
where
saw
they
the
missed
end
a
of that
ton
one.
of, yeah, they missed a ton of free throws, and then they just really gave it up. And so, every team is susceptible. I mean, I think weirdly enough, the Clippers are probably the strongest team in that bunch right now. The Warriors obviously are threatening as well too, but they just took a double-digit loss to the Spurs, where the Spurs had a huge comeback in the fourth quarter. So, all these teams are vulnerable. So, I want to encourage a fan base, like, don't be too scared. Like, this is going to be hopefully fun. I mean, we'll see in a week how much fun we're having, but every team's susceptible. So don't feel like this is going to be a murderous row, because again, those other teams look at us as well, probably saying the same thing. Like, oh man, the Wolves have lost some tough games, but there's a lot of talent on that team. There's still that Anthony Edwards on that team, and they're scared of us as well too. So it goes both ways.
Yep. We'll also have NBA Cup games next week. The Tuesday game against Houston and the Friday game against LA. So we get to see that highlighter green court that was unveiled, or at least leaked earlier in the year. If the stakes there, if people don't know, because their one loss in this cup game was to Portland, who I haven't checked the standings, but I'm guessing will not be at the top of the standings. If they beat Houston and the Clippers, they will make the second round, because they'll be no one else. They will have beat every single team will have a loss, and they'll likely have beaten. They'll have the head-to-head tiebreakers against whoever they're tied. So if you want them to make the second round of the cup, cheer for them to win on Tuesday and
Dreams
Friday.
alive. Yeah, the
We'll
dreams
see if
alive.
what kind of that does to their schedule. Those games are mid December, whether they're in the cup tournament games and they get those games, or if they're out of it, they're replacement games for that portion of the schedule. Will come mid December. I mean, I think I'd like to. Wolves just need wins. So if they get wins and they make the second round of the NBA Cup, that's a fun bonus.
Yeah, I'd love to see another banner up there. That's the Lynx are doing their part. Their Lynx are getting a lot of banners up there, but the Wolves, yeah, they got to work on that. So any more type of decorations we could get up at Target Center would be great.
Yep. Well, the Lynx won the Commissioner's Cup,
That's right.
the W's version of this in-season tournament. So hopefully, if we can just continue to stack in-season tournaments, maybe the Wolves can also match the Lynx title banners as well.
Yeah, I got to give a shout out to. I'm wearing a T-Wolves gaming shirt right now. I actually got this in a giveaway, so that's how I got that. But the
Also
T-Wolves
champions.
gaming, yeah, also champions. That's what I was gonna say. Many years ago, they won. I think it was on the inaugural NBA Cups for the 2K League. So everyone's done it. I think it's a Wolves turn.
Exactly. Well, any chance you get to close the pod talking about Wolves gaming, you got to do it. So that's going to be where we wrap up for today. No second pod this week. Going to take that off for Thanksgiving, but Leo and I will be back around the same day next week. So we'll see you guys then.
All right, y'all. Thanks for listening. Get home, drive safe.